on its head, because the devolved administrations are invited to planning committees, the exit planning committees of the UK government hold. They are fully aware of the proactive, positive steps, measures that we've introduced in preparations for leaving the European Union. I'm only disappointed has not been extended by the government that would allow us and give us the same confidence.
Jessica Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Orb Steelworks will be keenly felt in New York, and it's devastating news for workers to discuss what the government will do.
Well, Mr. Speaker, absolutely. I will agree. I will meet with the honourable lady and work on response with her. I recognise the priority that she's placed on this operation for some time and highlighted some of the risks and concerns she had some time ago. Yesterday I spoke to Roy Rickus from the Community Union. I've also naturally spoken to and we're working with Bays in terms of challenging the issues that Tata are raising to seek to bring them to the most competitive position possible.
Words.
Speaker, with reports that the British government are stockpiling body bags as a part of its no-deal Brexit preparations, what assessments has he undertaken of the amount of Welsh people who may die as a result of medical shortages following a no-deal Brexit?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, by supporting the motion last night and the bill this evening, is simply prolonging the uncertainty. The Welsh people want, and the British people want, certainty about our exit from the European Union. We are determined to leave at the end of October. We would like to leave. That will give us the smoothest possible exit, but at least we can plan for the opportunities the future brings.
Order. I appeal to the House to calm down. There's a very large number of private conversations taking place. At the very least, it is rather discourteous to and disrespectful of the people of Wales. Mr. Ross Thompson.
Number 9, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
This government is a unionist government, firmly committed to strengthening our United Kingdom. My noble friend Lord Dunlop is conducting an independent inquiry to ensure UK government structures are configured to strengthen the working of the Union whilst respecting and supporting the current devolution and settlement.
My honourable friend agree with me that all 4 nations of our United Kingdom benefit from the close bonds of our union, and that
totally agree with my honourable friend. Seeing powers coming back to this United Kingdom and going to the devolved tier of government will help bring our four nations closer together. But that's why it's so strange that those people who call themselves nationalists actually want to take powers back so they can give them away again to Brussels.
The real nationalist party in this chamber now, after last night's event, is the Tory party, which is rapidly turning into the right-wing English party.
Minister! What a load of rubbish. This party is absolutely firmly committed to being a unionist party, and we will not aims a division by raising the prospects of second referendums, including second referendums on separation.
With your permission to question 12.
Mr. Speaker, the Welsh economy approaches EU exit from a leaving the European.
Mrs. Madeline Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Commandant has said the school will close 2024. What steps is the Secretary taking, given that it's in his constituency, to ensure that the people there will have to either move to Carolina or, even better, remain in Wales with this viable school remaining where it should be.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, thankfully, those who work at St Basis have a very strong champion in the local MP and the Secretary of State for Wales in ensuring that the military presence is maintained. We just wish the Welsh government was slightly more cooperative.
Order. Questions to the Prime Minister. Siobhan McDonough.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to join me in paying tribute to PC Andrew Harper, who was killed while on duty. His death and the serious injuries sustained by PC Stuart Oughton in London and PC Gareth Phillips in Birmingham are a powerful reminder of the dangers that police officers face every day to keep us safe. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in the House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Siobhan McDonough.
Mr. Speaker, can I associate myself with the brave acts mentioned about the police officers? The former Brexit, Mr. Speaker, the former Prime Minister's deal was unacceptable to this House, but to leave without a deal is unthinkable. Yet Yet the Prime Minister pursues a game of brinkmanship built on the livelihoods, health and future of my constituents and our country. But there is still an option to resolve this once and for all. If the Prime Minister really believes in no deal, let him put it to the people and ask our people if that is the price they want to pay.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Lady knows very well, this government will take this country out of the European Union on October the 31st. There is only one thing that stands in our way. It is the surrender bill currently being proposed by the leader of the opposition. And can I invite her to confirm? Can I invite the leader of the opposition to confirm when he stands up shortly that if that surrender bill is passed, he will allow the people of this country to have their view on what he is proposing to hand over in their name with an election on October the 15th, Mr. Speaker.
Robert Halfon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can my right honourable friend confirm that when we leave the European Union on the 31st of October, no longer will we be subjected to EU rules on VAT in terms of our energy bill? Households around £55 extra every year. Will he confirm that we will take back control of our energy bills and save households around £1.5 billion a year on the heating and lighting?
Minister.
My right honourable friend, and for his excellent suggestion. As he knows, we do currently apply the reduced 5% EU law, but of course when we leave the European Union on October the 31st, it will be open to us to change this for the benefit of the people of
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I start by paying my deepest respects to PC Andrew Harper, who died in the line of duty. It's a reminder about the risk that he faced and police officers faced all the time.
From the Prime Minister,
to protect communities, our sympathies to his family, to his colleagues and his friends. I also, Mr. Speaker, want to send our condolences to those people affected by Hurricane Dorian. Hit the Bahamas the weekend. I'm hoping that the government it will be doing all they can to make sure all help is necessary. Yesterday, it was revealed, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister's negotiating strategy is to run down the clock, and that the Attorney General told
We delayed
Minister his belief
and now we want
that
to
the European Union
delay
would
again for
drop the backstop
absolutely no
was a complete fantasy.
What is he
From the Prime Minister must
We are spending
and will
we're spending
be heard, Prime Minister.
but 20,000 more police officers on the streets. Yeah, absolutely clear. This government is going to get a deal from our friends in Brussels, and we will get the backstop out. We will get an agreement. I think this House can approve. The only thing that's standing in our way is the undermining of those negotiations by this surrender bill, which would lead to more dither and delay. We delayed in March, we delayed in April, and now he wants to delay again for absolutely no purpose whatever. What does he intend by this? We are spending in this government, we're spending £1 billion to put 20,000 more police officers on the street. He wants to spend £1 billion a month net to keep us EU beyond October the 31st, and I will never allow that.
Mr. Speaker, I really fail to see how I can be accused of undermining negotiations, because no negotiations are taking place. He's been Prime Minister for 6 weeks and he promised to get Brexit sorted. In 6 weeks he's presented nothing to change the previous Prime Minister's deal, which he twice voted against. These negotiations that he talks about are a sham. All he's doing is running down the clock. At the weekend, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster said food prices will go up under no deal. Will the Prime Minister publish the Yellowhammer documents so that people can see which food prices will go up and by how much?
The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster said absolutely no such thing. I can tell him the preparations for no deal, thanks to his good offices and thanks to his efforts, are very far advanced. But I tell you, the surest way of getting no deal is to undermine the country's ability to negotiate, which is what he is doing. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that if this bill is passed this afternoon, I have to say I don't want an election. I don't think he wants an election. But there's a petition on his own Labour. There's a petition on his own Labour website with 57,000 people, including Carol Nigel, Graham and Phoebe calling for an election. I don't know whether there's a Jeremy on the list. Mr. Speaker, I know he's worried about free trade deals with America, but there's only one that I can see in this House, and he's on that bench. Will he confirm again? Will he confirm? Will he confirm that he will let the people decide? Let the people decide on what he is doing to this country's negotiating position by having a general election on October the 15th.
Jeremy Corbyn!
Well, maybe the Prime Minister could tell us what the negotiating position actually is. And since the question I asked, the Prime Minister may have forgotten it in his rather lengthy peroration there, that the British Retail Consortium said, and I quote, that it was categorically untrue when the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster denied there would be shortages of fresh food. Mr. Speaker, I hope no more young female staff are going to be frog marched out of Downing Street. Because there was another government leak at the weekend concerning, Mr. Speaker, there was another government leak at the weekend concerning disruption of our ports. The leaked documents written by the government in the last fortnight show no deal would lead to shortages on the shelves and of medical supplies in hospitals. People need to prepare. So can I ask the Prime Minister again, will he publish in full the Yellowhammer documents so people can see which foodstuffs are not going to be available, which medicines are not going to be supplied, and what will happen to the shortages of vital supplies in every one of our hospitals all over this country.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid that the Right Honourable Gentleman is guilty of the most shameless scaremongering. We have made ample preparations for coming out of the EU. What his party is recommending is yet...
Order! It's order! Order! It's very difficult to hear the responses from the Prime Minister. Members must calm themselves. There is a long way to go. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what he is recommending is yet more dither, yet more delay, yet more uncertainty for business. What we in this government want to do is deliver on the mandate of the people. Now, he used to be a Democrat. He used to believe in upholding the referendum result. Can he say now whether he would vote in favour of leave or remain, and can he say now whether he's in favour of a second referendum or not?
The Prime Minister failed to answer my questions about food supply, about medicine supplies, and about the problems in hospitals. He refuses to publish the Yellow Hammer documents, and he talks about scaremongering. Where does the information come from other than his office in his government? And he's obviously so confident of the position he's adopted, he's now prepared to spend £100 million of our money on an advertising campaign in order to try to persuade people that everything's fine. He knows it's not, they know it's not, he is hiding the facts. The government has refused to publish its impact assessments on how a no-deal Brexit would affect poverty levels in this country. They received a request from under the Freedom of Information Act from the Glasgow-based Poverty Alliance. The DWP replied that the public interest would not be served by that disclosure. Will the Prime Minister publish that analysis? If he won't, what has he got to hide?
Mr. Speaker, unlike the right honourable member, who would squander £1 billion a month of taxpayers' money on staying pointlessly in the EU, this government is getting on with running a sound economy so that the poorest people in our country are seeing increases in their wages for the first time in more than a decade, and I'm proud to say that the living wage, Mr. Speaker, £4,500 more home every year than they were in 2010, thanks to this Conservative government.
Speaker, you don't have to go very far from the portals of this House to see real destitution. People begging and sleeping on the streets. Child poverty is up since 2010. Pensioner poverty is up. In-work poverty is up. And he won't give us any of the information of the assessments of increased poverty that could come from his government's proposals. We are less than 60 days away from leaving the EU with no deal. The Prime Minister has had 2 days in office before the summer recess and then planned to prorogue Parliament. Yesterday he lost one vote, his first vote in Parliament. He now wants to dissolve Parliament. He's desperate, absolutely desperate to avoid scrutiny. And in his third day in office, after 5 questions from me, we haven't had an answer to any of them. I can see why he's desperate to avoid scrutiny. He has no plan to get a new deal, no plan, no authority, and no majority. If he... Mr. Speaker.
Order. If we have to go on longer because people sitting on the Treasury bench are yelling to try to disrupt, so be it, we'll go on longer. People used to believe in good behaviour. It'll better happen, or it will take a whole lot longer. Very simple, very clear. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Prime Minister does to the country what he's done to his party in the past 24 hours, I think a lot of people have a great deal to fear from his incompetence, his vacillation, and his refusal to publish known facts that are known to him about the effects of a no-deal Brexit.
Prime Minister, I really don't see how, with a straight face, the right honourable gentleman can accuse anybody of being unwilling when he will not agree. He will not agree to submit his surrender bill to the verdict of the people in an election. He's frightened. And Mr. Speaker, he makes a contrast. He makes a contrast between this government and his own proposals. The contrast could not be clearer. He thinks, we think that the of this country are to be found in Paris and in Berlin and in the White House, and he thinks that they're in the Kremlin and in Tehran and in Caracas. Mr. Speaker, we're putting 20,000 police on the street. We're upgrading 20. We have 20 new hospital upgrades. We are growing the economy. He, by contrast, would put a 300 billion tax on every company in the country. He wants a tax on homes, and he's calling incessantly for a general strike. The Shadow Education Secretary says that their economic policy is, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, by your leave, shit or bust. I say it's both. say both, Mr. Speaker. What this needs, what this country needs, is sensible, moderate, progressive, conservative government, and to take this country out of the EU on October the 31st, and that is what we are going to deliver.
With the closed question, Dr. Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A well-behaved question 8 on the National Security Advisor.
Glad to hear it. The Prime Minister.
As my right honourable friend is aware, the decision to put the two roles together was taken by my predecessor, though I have a high admiration, I may say, for the gentleman in question.
Dr. Julian Lewis.
Well, I hope my right honourable friend isn't going to follow every policy by his predecessor. This is one the Defence Committee needs to take evidence from the National Security Advisor on the previous failure to anticipate the Iranian reaction to the British seizure of a tanker in the Gulf. It's hardly likely, however, that the Cabinet Secretary will come before the Defence Committee. So wouldn't it make sense as soon as possible to have a full-time occupant of the post of National Security Advisor, so select committees and the NSC itself can do our jobs properly?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think that the role has been very well performed in recent times. I take my right honourable friend's point very humbly and sincerely, and I will make sure that invitations to appear before his committee are considered in the usual way, and he gets all the satisfaction that he desires.
Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last night, Parliament once again defeated the shambolic Tory government. Today, Mr. Speaker, we have seized back control from a Prime Minister who is behaving like a dictator more than a Democrat. The Prime Minister must be stopped. MPs must unite across this House to take no deal off the table tonight. Mr. Speaker, we will defeat the government again. So can the Prime Minister tell us, when we succeed, will he respect the democratic vote of this House, the democratic will of the people we represent, and finally act to remove the threat of a catastrophic no-deal Brexit?
Three-year investment in education. Brexit done, Mr. Speaker, on October the 31st, and don't be attracted to any more dither and delay and confusion under the Labour Party.
Vernon Coker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister yesterday booted out 21 MPs from his own for voting against a reckless no-deal Brexit. These included very well-respected members of this House, including a former Chancellor, including Churchill's son, and the father of the House, presumably on the orders of his Chief of Staff. Given that the Prime Minister himself voted against the former Prime Minister's deal without losing the whip, does this not show and demonstrate to the British public his view of life? Namely, one rule for him and one rule for everyone else.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take any letters from the Labour Party.
Order, leave me to control the proceedings. I should be grateful for your assistance in that regard. That heckling will cease, and we will hear the reply. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take any lectures from anybody in the Labour Party about how they run their party. Look, this is a party where MPs, good hard-working people, daily hounded out by anti-Semitic mobs. Let's be absolutely clear. If the Right Honourable Gentleman is actually interested in democracy, if he's interested in democracy, then I hope he's been listening to what I've been saying today. In an anti-democratic way, the bill before the House today would hand over this country's right to decide how long to remain in the EU, and it would hand it over to the EU itself. That's what that bill involves. If he thinks that's a good idea, then let him submit it. Let him submit it to the judgment of the British people in an election.
Richard Harrington.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure you all know there is the 9th annual Watford Jobs Fair. Now, I'm taking particular interest in the 1,000 or so vacancies this year. The other members of both sides of the House might be interested as well. I'd like to thank Victoria Lynch and Anna Cox for organising it. We've got 1,000 vacancies in more than 60 companies. Mr. Speaker, I would like the Prime Minister, if he has any spare time tomorrow, because there's not much going on here. Perhaps he could pop up to Watford, where he'd be very welcome.
I thank my right honourable friend, who has been a wonderful champion for Watford and for conservative values, he's also done a great deal to. And I've been to campaign for him in Watford. I've seen how popular he is. May I say that there are 20,000 job vacancies now in the police. If he wishes to take up that role, or if anybody in Watford wishes to take up that role, and there are many more in nursing, because as he knows, in Watford and across this country, unemployment is at a record low, and employment is at record highs because of the sound economic policies this government has followed. Thank you.
McInnes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Director General of the CBI wrote to all MPs in the North West, urging us to do everything we can to get a deal that works for businesses in our region. The CBI says a no-deal Brexit would be disastrous for North West business, particularly small businesses. And we all know what the Prime Minister has said in the past about business. But now that he has assumed a position of some responsibility, will he stop this relentless posturing around no deal, listen to the CBI and work to protect our vital businesses?
Prime Minister.
Again, a bit rich from a member of a party whose shadow chancellor says that business is the enemy, and she should listen. She should listen. She should listen. Where is he? He's not there. Where he's gone. She should listen to the people of her constituency who voted to leave the EU and implement their wishes, and that is what this government is going to do.
Sir Roger Gale.
Mr. Speaker, much has been made about provision for EU nationals resident in the United Kingdom post-Brexit. Much less comfort has been offered to those 1.5 million United Kingdom nationals resident throughout the rest of the European Union. Is the Prime Minister in a position to confirm, not on a piecemeal but on a pan-European basis, that all pensions will be paid in full, that exportable benefits will continue to be paid in full, that healthcare will be covered in full, and that rights of domicile and freedom of movement will be protected? There are frightened people who need an answer.
Prime Minister.
I thank my right honourable friend that matter is, of course, at the top of our concerns with all our EU friends and partners, and we've made it absolutely clear, Mr. Speaker, that the very, very generous offer that this country has rightly made to the 3.4 million EU citizens here in this country must be reciprocated symmetrically and in full by our friends in the way that he has described.
Stephen Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has said the great city of Portsmouth is too full of obesity and drug addiction. Despite this disgraceful, inaccurate statement about my home city, how would he expect our much-loved NHS to deal with these issues when it is his government who is exposing us to medicine and staff shortages, according to his own Home Health Secretary, by hurtling us towards a no-deal Brexit?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I must correct the honourable gentleman, because in fact unemployment is well down in his constituency, employment is up, and health outcomes are up. And when I made those remarks, which was many years ago, it was I'm afraid when his constituency had the sad misfortune to have a Labour government in power. That is no longer the case.
Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Like me, I know that my right honourable friend has deep concerns about the unfair retrospective loan charge. It is tearing families apart, driving people to despair, and reportedly some to suicide. With over 8,000 people signing my petition saying that we cannot go on like this, can my right honourable friend advise the House on what urgent action his government will be taking to address this?
I thank my honourable friend, because this is an issue that my own constituents have raised with me, and I know that many of my honourable friends have had the issue raised with them. I'm sure that members on all sides of the House have met people who have taken out loan charges in the expectation that they could reduce their tax exposure. It is a very, very difficult issue, a very, very difficult issue, and what I have undertaken to do is to have a thoroughgoing review of the matter, and of course I will make sure that my honourable friend has every opportunity to have further discussions with the Treasury about how to redress the situation, about the gravity.
turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban or coming from Bongo land, the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks? Racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime. And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Let's hear the answer. The Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker,
Order. The response from the Prime Minister will be heard. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, can I just say to the honourable gentleman that if he took the trouble to read the article in question, he would see that it was a strong Liberal defence, as he began his question by saying, of everybody's right to wear whatever they want in this country. And I speak as somebody who is not only proud to have Muslim ancestors, but to Sikhs such as himself. And I'm also proud, Mr. Speaker, to say that under this government we have the most diverse, the most cabinet in the history of this country. And we truly reflect modern Britain. We truly reflect modern Britain. And, Mr. Speaker, what we have yet to hear from anywhere in the Labour Party is any hint of apology for the virus of anti-Semitism that is now rampant, in their ranks. And I would like to hear that from the honourable member opposite.
Margaret James.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Lady who you and I both revere, I'm sure, Speaker, once said, advisors advise,
ministers decide. Can I ask the Prime Minister to bear that statement closely in mind in relation to his own chief advisor, Dominic Cummings?
Order. The House were to want, as a matter of course, to allow clapping by decision of the House, so be it, but it should not otherwise become a regular practice. But we've heard the question pungently expressed. Let's hear the answer from the Minister.
I'm used to breasting applause from Labour audiences, particularly since, unlike the gentleman opposite, we are actually devoted to delivering on the mandate of those Labour constituencies. We are going to take the UK out of the EU on October the 30th. And as for the excellent question that my honourable friend asked, be in no doubt that we are deciding on a policy to take this country forward, not backwards, as he would do.
Finally, Jude Swinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I say to the Prime Minister that his response to the honourable member for Slough was appalling? Yes. An apology is what was required, rather than kind of justification that there is ever any acceptable context for the remarks such as he made in that column. He is the Prime Minister of our country. His words carry weight, and he has to be more careful with what he says. My constituent, Kristen, is afraid because her mum, a European citizen, has been struggling to get settled status after 45 years in this country. Our friends, colleagues and neighbours deserve better. His failures and his carelessness with language.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in the case of his constituent, Kristen, forgive me, in the case of her constituent, Kristen, if she has indeed been here for 45 years, and I'm sure she has, then she should be automatically eligible to settled status. So clearly, Mr. Speaker, it is a difficult case, but the answer is for her to bring it to the Home Secretary, and I'm sure we can sort it out.
Order.
those who are
sector debt is falling sustainably as a share of our national income, and we've boosted our credibility around the world and built confidence in the UK economy again. Labour left behind a bankrupt Britain, and we've fixed it. Now, thanks to those difficult decisions and the hard work of British people, we can now afford to turn the page and move forward from a decade of recovery to a decade of renewal. Mr. Speaker, our careful management of the public finances means we can now afford to spend more on vital public services. So today, I'm deciding to set the real increase in day-to-day spending next year at £13.8 billion, delivering on the people's priorities across the NHS, education and police, and giving certainty to all departments about their budgets for the next year, clearing the decks for a government that is delivering Brexit. And I've always believed in the importance of living within our means. And unlike the party opposite, I won't squander. So even with the extra spending, we are still meeting the current fiscal rules. But while our biggest challenge a decade ago was getting the deficit down, our biggest challenge today is getting our economic growth back to where it was. If we can do that, Mr. Speaker, we can make sure there can be future spending increases that can also be sustainable. Boosting wages and raising living standards, which have stagnated for too long, levelling across the regions and nations. And we need to improve our productivity, the amount that's produced every hour worked. That isn't just a technical term. Lower wages and uneven growth across the country. Productivity had continued to grow at its pre-crisis levels, then average annual pounds higher. That pressure on people's pay packets speaks to a wider sense of disillusion and unfairness, especially in so many towns and cities outside London and the South East. Even as the economy has grown, the people have worked hard, and not everyone feels that they've benefited. There's a real sense of anxiety that's emerged over the sense of politicians aren't listening, and that the free market model isn't living up to its promise. We're seeing divisions emerge throughout society between regions and communities, rich and poor, rural and urban, young and old. And addressing those concerns will be a serious effort, and that's what will be shown in these spending plans today. So we will develop a new economic plan for the year recovery and looks forward to a decade of renewal. A plan that invests more in the future growth of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, we can afford to invest more because our economy is growing and our public finances are. And we are also deciding on our fiscal approach at a time when the cost of government borrowing is at record lows. Interest rates have been low for many years, and in recent weeks the cost of government borrowing has fallen below 1% across all maturities. In the years after the financial crisis, many expected interest rates to swiftly rise to pre-crisis levels, but structural factors have in the UK but across the developed world, increasing our confidence that we will be able to continue to see low rates for a number of years. So it is my judgment today that with a strong fiscal position and record low cost of borrowing, we can invest more in our growing economy. That doesn't mean that we can borrow more forever and ever. The sustainability of our public finances depends on wider factors, not just the cost of borrowing. Our population, the global economy is slowing, the challenge of decarbonisation is real. So we won't be writing blank cheques. We won't be able to afford everything, and we'll need in policies that deliver real productivity gains and boost economic growth in the long term. National priorities, within a clear set of rules to anchor our fiscal policy and keep control of our national debt. So, Mr. Speaker, today I can announce that ahead of the budget later this year, I will review our fiscal framework to ensure it meets the economic priorities of today, not of a decade ago. Mr. Speaker, the first priority of our new economic plan will be to rebuild our infrastructure. High quality and reliable infrastructure is essential to how we live, we work and travel. But the truth is that across many decades, governments of all colours have underinvested in infrastructure. The quality of our infrastructure means we've fallen behind our competitors. We're the fifth largest economy in the world. It isn't good enough that we're so far behind on infrastructure. It isn't good enough that so many commuters staring at a delayed sign at their train platform. It isn't good enough that our small business slow internet speeds and poor mobile communications. Change that. We want faster broadband for everyone in the country, quicker mobile connections and better signal coverage, cleaner energy, greener hospitals. We want to push the frontiers of science and technology and turbocharge our ambition on research and development. We want to build and invest in every region and every nation of this great United Kingdom. From the motor highway to the information highway, we'll settle for nothing less than Mr. Speaker, to keep spending under control, we will of course set a high bar for funding projects. And they'll have to show real value for money with credible delivery plans target that investment at national priorities like regional growth and decarbonisation. Let me take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, chair of the all-party group on infrastructure. So, yes, use the government's resources to kick-start the infrastructure revolution, but we'll also do more to give private investors the confidence to back these projects too. We want all of this to be underpinned by strong, independent institutions. We set up the National Infrastructure Commission in 2015 and will continue to rely on its expert advice as we look carefully at other institutional reforms that might be needed. So our infrastructure revolution will be strategic and carefully planned. And speaking of revolutionaries, Mr. Speaker, let's contrast that with Labour's approach. I'll invest in new infrastructure, and Labour will borrow hundreds of millions to renationalise unproductive assets and then run them into the ground. Mr. Speaker, the choice for the country is clear between a wasteful, ideological Mr. Speaker, we lay the foundations of a new economic plan of necessary work to fix the public finances and writing a new chapter in our public services. Health and education aren't just the names of departments. They're lifelines of opportunities. They're lifelines of opportunities, just as they were for me when I was growing up. And lecturers who persuaded me to study economics in the first place.
Order. Apologise to the Chancellor for having interrupted. There will be ample opportunity for colleagues to question the statement must be heard. The Chancellor.
Mr. Speaker, health and education are lifelines of opportunities, just as they were. The teachers and lecturers who persuaded me to study economics in the first place. The police officers who kept us safe when the street I grew up in became a centre for drug dealers. The NHS that cared for my dad in his final days. Numbers on a spreadsheet. These are the beating heart of our country, and we invest to support them today. Mr. Speaker, as I turn to the details of today's announcements, wait, it's coming. Let me first thank the dedicated officials in the Treasury for all their hard work, delivering what I'm told is the fastest SR in history. And let me who takes the approach to spending you would expect for an adopted Yorkshireman. He's displayed his typical mix of energy, courtesy and rigour. Let me just say there's no productivity problem in the Chief Secretary's office. Mr. Speaker, next year I will add £13.4 billion to the plans for total public spending, including £1.7 billion added to capital spending. These extra funds take the real increase in day-to-day spending to £13.8 billion, or 4.1%. That means I'm delivering the fastest increase in day-to-day spending for 15 years. That funding allows us to start a new chapter for our public services and funds the people's priorities. Our decisions today have been guided by our ambition to build a safer Britain, a healthier Britain, a better educated Britain, and a more global Britain. Mr. Speaker, my family grew up on a road in Bristol that a national newspaper described back then as Britain's most dangerous street. But to us, it was just home. After we left, my brother became a policeman and has been in the force for over 25 years. So I've seen the impact that the job has on the lives of those that are courageous enough to do it. So today I pay tribute to the bravery, courage and dedication of our hard-working police officers. As Home Secretary, I saw firsthand how the demands of our police forces are changing and increasing. Yes, traditional crime is down by a third since 2010, but the threats from terrorism have escalated and evolved. The internet is changing how criminals operate and break the law. And we've seen too many horrifying stabbings on Britain's streets. So with our frontline officers reporting that they are overstretched, it's clearly time to act and do more. And today, I can announce, Mr. Speaker, a 6.3% real terms increase in Home Office spending. The biggest increase in 15 years. That means £750 million to fund the first year of our plan to recruit 20,000 new police officers. With an extra £45 million this year, so that recruitment can start immediately, getting the first 2,000 officers in place by the end of March. And let me thank my right honourable and honourable friends, the members for South West Bedfordshire, Wokingham, Isle of Wight, Nuneaton and Telford for championing the police and police resourcing. The threats facing our police officers are evolving too. So the way we resource them will have to evolve in three areas. First, serious organised crime is the most deadly national threat faced by the UK, costing the nation at least £37 billion a year. The scale and the complexity of this threat means that we need to do more to develop our response. So I'm announcing today a formal review to identify the powers, the capabilities, governance and the funding needed ahead of a full spending review next year. Second, this year sadly has seen more attacks on places of worship, including mosques and synagogues. That's unacceptable in a diverse, open, tolerant society like ours. So to protect our religious and minority communities, I'm announcing today that I will double the places of worship fund next year. And I thank my honourable friends, the members for Hendon and the member for Finchley and Golders Green, for their tireless work in combating hate crime. Also today, I'm announcing £30 million of new funding to tackle the scourge of online child sexual exploitation. Mr. Speaker, a better resource police force will deliver better outcomes for the British people, and it will increase the demands on our already overstretched criminal justice system. So today, we invest more in our criminal justice system to manage that increasing demand, with a 5% real terms increase in the resource budget for the Ministry of Justice and an increase in their capital budget to £20 million next year, and an extra £80 million for the Crown Prosecution Service. Taken together, today's spending round will dramatically functioning of the criminal justice system, with more prosecutors, a reformed probation system, better security in prisons, and funding to begin delivery of 10,000 new prison places. Mr. Speaker, the spending round is delivering on the people's priorities, and there is no higher NHS. Last year, we increased NHS spending by an extra £34 billion a year by 2023. That was the single largest cash increase in our Today, we reaffirm our commitment to the NHS with a £6.2 billion increase in NHS funding next year. We're investing more in training and professional to transform bus services across the country. We're funding ultra-low emission buses to respond to passenger needs in real time. We'll set out more details of our new buses in due course once my right honourable friend the Prime Minister has finished painting models for them. Now, Mr. Speaker, our new economic plan won't stop at the borders of England. It will be a plan for all nations of the United Kingdom. In Scotland, decisions taken in today's spending round will provide over £1.2 billion of extra funding for next year. And we are taking a further step today. Mr. Speaker, we are taking a further step today to support Scottish farmers. In 2013, when the UK government allocated the Common Agricultural Policy funding within the UK, Scottish farmers lost out. Today, we correct that decision, making available an extra £160 million for Scottish farmers, something that I know that my honourable friends on these benches from Scotland will be pleased to hear. I'd also like to take the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank my friend Ruth Davidson for everything she's done for that great nation. In Wales, today an extra £400 million from today's announcements. I welcome the case that's been made by the DUP for improved hospice care, for support for those that have been tragically wronged in the contaminated blood scandal. And those are rightly devolved matters. I sincerely hope the administration will use some of the new funding that we're providing today to address those issues. Taken together, today's announcements will give the devolved administrations the biggest spending settlement for a decade. Mr. Speaker, throughout our history, Britain has always been at its best when we are open, global and outward-looking. Trading with the world beyond our shores has always been key to Britain's economic prosperity. And as we seize the opportunities of Brexit, we can establish new partnerships and trade relationships across the globe. For too long, we've let those trading relationships wither. And as my right honourable friend, the Trade Secretary, would be the first to acknowledge, this is a disgrace. So today, we invest in securing Britain's influence in the world. We support diplomacy with £90 million of funding for 1,000 new diplomats and overseas staff and 14 new upgraded diplomatic posts. We'll boost trade with £60 million to extend the Great Campaign for next year. And if you're in doubt about Britain's important role on the world stage, just look at the bonanza of international festivals and events that I'm funding today. In December, we'll welcome the NATO leaders meeting. Next year, we'll host the COP26 discussions if our bid is successful, thanks to the leadership of my right honourable friend, the member for Devizes. In 2021, we'll host the G7, and in 2022, we'll host the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. Today, I can confirm the government's total commitment to this celebration of sport will be over £500 million. The Games will be a huge boost for the West Midlands, and I'd like to congratulate Andy Street for the leadership he has shown in that region. One of my personal highlights of the summer was meeting the England cricket team in the Downing Street Gardens. That World Cup winning side showed us the importance not just of talent and hard work, but of diversity too. A skipper from Ireland, a bowler from Barbados, and an all-rounder from New Zealand. As with our cricket team, so with our country, we are the most successful multi-ethnic democracy in the world. And I'm proud to live in a country where embraces modern Britain in all its diversity. And we make available today an additional £10 million to continue the Integration Areas programme that I first announced in 2018 as Community Secretary. That fund will continue to support thousands of the estimated 1 million adults in the UK who do not speak English well or at all. Openness to talent from around the world matters for our economy too. Once we've left the EU, we'll be able to create a points-based immigration system that meets the needs of the UK economy and the British people. We've already dropped arbitrary immigration targets. We've recently announced a new, highly flexible fast-track visa for scientists. And today, I'm putting funding in place to give victims of the Windrush scandal the compensation that they deserve. All part of confirming once and for all that Britain will always be open to the world's brightest and the best talent. Mr. Speaker, nowhere are our values of openness and tolerance better expressed than in international aid. The UK aid logo can be seen around the world, on health clinics, school books, emergency food supplies, and so today we protect our commitment to spending 0.7 of our national income on aid. Global Britain is about projecting defence and national security than any other country in Europe. We are one of only 7 countries to meet the 2% commitment to NATO. So today, we will go further still, with an additional £2.2 billion of funding for the MOD, a real terms increase of 2.6%, increasing again the share of our national income we spend on defence and national security. This year is the we pay tribute to the sacrifices of the extra generation of British soldiers who fought and died during that campaign. And today, £7 million funding for the Normandy Memorial Trust to complete their memorial overlooking Gold Beach, where so many troops came ashore. The veterans of today's wars as well, as we confirm the funding today for the new Office of Veterans Affairs, and gallant friend, the member on his tireless work in Champions. I've set out today a big increase in public spending, police and safer prisons, more nurses and better hospitals, more money for schools and further education. But now I turn to the remaining departments across Whitehall, those that have not been protected over the last decade. Investing in the people's priorities inevitably means difficult decisions elsewhere. Every spending review presented to this House over the last 15 years has had to find this party has never shied away from taking the difficult decisions to make sure that we live within our means. Those decisions were tough, but they have paid off. And so I can announce today that no department will be cut next year. Every single government department has had its budget for day-to-day spending increased at least in line with inflation. That's what I mean by the end of austerity, Mr. Speaker. Britain's hard work paying off. A country living within its means, able to spend more on the things that matter. Mr. Speaker, I am delivering today's spending round in unusual circumstances. Understandably, much of our attention and the attention of the country is focused on the important matters before the House later today. But we must not forget that Brexit is not all that matters to the British people. It is not the only topic at the dinner table. Today's spending round makes sure that if you fall ill, you can get the care and the support that you need. That when you drop off your child, you can trust that they will get the best possible education. That when you walk down the street, you can feel safe and secure. And today, we move from a decade of recovery to a decade of renewal. Yes, we will keep control of the public finances, but we invest too in the long-term growth of this country. It was just 6 weeks ago today that this new administration took office. The PM promised that we wouldn't wait until Brexit Day to deliver on the people's priorities. And today we meet that promise with a new chapter for our public services, a new plan for our economy, and a new beginning for this country. I commend this statement to the House.